Hey there, guys. Welcome. Chris Howard here. And I just wanted to reach out to you with a special holiday message for all of our coaching and mentoring clients and wish you happy holidays, wish you a happy new year, and share with you something to drive in the new year, a concept and an idea that you can take out with you for New Year's Day here. We're back on our regular calendar schedule with Wednesday's session for the 3rd. So I'll look forward to seeing you on that session. And today, the concept that I really wanted to drive home, because as we think about the new year, everybody always sets their New Year's resolutions, and half the time they make them happen, half the time they don't, probably less than half. But when we look at our new year and how to launch most powerfully into the new year, my greatest wish and my greatest desire is to help you realize your every dream in 2019. And so I think launching into the new year with the right attitude is going to be the difference that makes the difference this year. And so if I can help to foster an incredible attitude to move into 2019 with, that's my desire on this particular connection that we have. And I did this fun stuff. I was playing with the deep trance identification that we've been doing while I was in the Gili Islands a couple of days back, just remote little islands off the coast of Bali with no motor vehicles, all they have is bikes and horse-drawn carriages, and internet has been so few and far between that I don't know I think there were some storms in the islands and stuff. So it's prevented me from really being able to jump on and do anything longer here over the last couple of days. But I'm taking advantage of this 10-minute interim break in the internet while I've got it. I apologize for the ambient noises that you may hear around. I'm in a hut in the middle of the rainforest jungle. They're doing construction next door. There's roosters here to wake you up. And, hopefully it's not the middle of the night where you are. But from this space, I want to share with you some of the fun learnings that I had in playing with the deep trance identification. So I've been doing a lot of preparation for the new year. As you know, we've got a brand new program coming up called Your Ultimate Breakthrough that I'm running in New York as well as in Los Angeles. It's in January and February. Hopefully you can come. We're going to do a whole lot of deep trance identification and modeling on the first night. And then we go into life purpose and driving you forward towards your greatest dreams. And then more back into modeling. And so it's going to be a cross of the best of everything I've done so far. So this is a brand new program. And I really just wanted to create something I can be proud of with Your Ultimate Breakthrough. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. And as such, in preparing for that, as well as preparing for our coaching sessions that we're going to do in the new year, because I really want to ramp it up and give you even more tools and be even more effective at the mindsets that we're instilling from these calls. So in the preparation for that, I was playing with deep trance identification myself. And rather than just looking at the billionaire mindset over the past several days, I did deep trance identification with Warren Buffett and Richard Branson and Oprah Winfrey. But I also went outside of that. So I looked at people like Bruce Lee and Elvis Presley and Tom Cruise, even looking across a wide spectrum of people to see, what learnings might be gleaned from stepping into each and every one of these people. With the idea, once again, in modeling, the only thing better than to model somebody is to become them. So to get the expansion of your neurology, to take your neural pathways in places that no man's gone before, or one person's gone before, but we want to expand that excellence. So this is really about expanding excellence in our lives. And I went into each one and got incredible learnings as I was doing these journeys. But then in addition to that, what I started to look for was similarities between them. And I found that as I went into the similarities between the people that I was looking at, that's where I really started to get some mind expansion after being inside their body, being them, thinking like them, thinking of what they, as Elvis Presley walks on stage for the Ed Sullivan Show, what is he valuing in that moment? What does he believe about his performance? What does he feel in that moment? So really stepping in to becoming Elvis Presley in that moment, what could be gleaned from that? And that was magical. But then taking it and looking at what's the dissimilarity between an Elvis Presley and an Oprah Winfrey? What's the similarity between a Tom Cruise and a Warren Buffett? And starting to look for what are all the bits and pieces that really put this whole package together in a way that produces amazing results. And one thing really stood out to me, and this is what I want to share with you for this special New Year's message. And I'm in stepping into several different iconic figures and looking at what was really the driver of their success, their motivating force, and what made them stand out so much. One concept that really came into my consciousness as I was doing this, that I think is of critical importance, is that to a person, whether we were looking at Tom Cruise or whether it was Bruce Lee or whether it was Warren Buffett, they all had this desire, an intense burning desire to be extraordinary at what they do. And it could be extraordinary at what they do. It could be to be extraordinary as a human being, but it's this burning desire. Napoleon Hill talks about the power of desire as far back as Think and Grow Rich, when he says that that's the fuel in the engine. That's what desire, that's what drives you forward to go after all things and to make all things great. And we've said before from The Alchemist that love is what makes all things great. Love is what transforms lead into gold in your life. So pouring and channeling your love and your desire into the creation of something amazing is the key to producing outstanding results from my perspective. But the desire to be extraordinary at something in and of itself is a slightly different take on desire. We've read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, or we've heard, you've heard about the 10,000 hour concept. But I think that when I talk about the desire to be extraordinary, it goes beyond the 10,000 hour concept, because the 10,000 hour concept is more like a static target. It's a goal. It's like, or a lot of people perceive it that way, where it's like, okay, once I put in my 10,000 hours, then I'll have mastery in something. And of course, in Malcolm Gladwell's book, famously, he says that anybody that's ever gained mastery in any domain has done it in about 10,000 hours. They put in about 10,000 hours of practice. And eventually they orchestrated tipping points in their performance or in whatever it is that they did, so that they hit the mastery type level, right? So that happens at about 10,000 hours, says Gladwell. However, Elvis Presley wasn't thinking about 10,000 hours when he was modeling the blues singers that he was playing next to on the front porch of the local pub, right? When he was modeling how to move his legs, because a lot of people think that the leg movement that Elvis Presley did was just a natural movement. And he describes it sometimes that way, where it's just that energy that's inside and it just comes pouring out and it's almost unstoppable. But I will say that he modeled that from another blues singer who used to move their legs much in the way that we saw Presley move in his later performances. So that was something that he learned. It was not something that necessarily just happened. If you look at the performance of a Beyonce, somebody who is truly extraordinary on the platform, when you see her, from her dance ability to her performance ability, and she does deep trance identification. We talked about that. She goes in, she channels this character, Sasha Fierce, that she becomes when she's on the platform. But even channeling Sasha Fierce doesn't just happen from the deep trance identification with Sasha Fierce. It happens from the sum total of all the practice and the effort and the 10,000 hours plus that Beyonce has put into her performance over time that led up to that performance. So deep trance identification and modeling can vastly increase the velocity with which we get someplace. So can practice and putting in those hours and doing what it takes to truly become extraordinary. But when we say 10,000 hours, once again, we think of it as being, it's almost like this static, once I do put in my 10,000 hours, it's almost like once I put in my time, right? then everything will be okay. But that's not the attitude that in my explorations that I found that each and every one of these individuals that I studied approached what they were doing with. It wasn't an attitude of, I've got to put in my time, that I've got to put in my 10,000 hours. It was an attitude of this burning desire to be extraordinary at what they did. When you think of Britney Spears, or you think of a Justin Timberlake from a very early age in the Mickey Mouse Club, honing their skills and their skill sets. And then you go back and you think about how much practice must they have put in? How many hours of practice must they put in on a daily basis, not just over a lifetime, but on a daily basis to get to where they eventually would rise to. But think about Michael Jackson. Think about the level of the work ethic that Michael Jackson had to get to where he was, right? And how much effort he put into that. That desire to be extraordinary is something that sets apart the outliers, I would say, even more than the 10,000 hour concept, because you're not going to get to the 10,000 hours unless you have the fuel to drive you there. So it's that desire to be extraordinary. Oprah Winfrey said, she said, you want to know what makes me incredible at what I do? She said, I did over 37,000 interviews. And she said, in those interviews, my desire was to improve myself, to, obviously she had an intention for her audience. The intentionality of Oprah Winfrey's shows was something that really set her radio shows and her later television shows apart from anything else that was out there, setting a real intention for what their audience was going to walk away with and what they were going to get. And that was really magical. But the work ethic of doing 37,000 hours of interviews is what makes somebody extraordinary. And that's 3 times the 10,000 hour concept. But what she says is, she said, I had this desire to learn so much, to get so good that eventually I could help other people make their lives better myself. A lot of people don't think of Oprah Winfrey as being a coach or being somebody who's there to help to bring out the best in people, but Oprah Winfrey does. That's been a trajectory that she's been on for a good portion of her life. And those interviews fueled her ability to be able to really make the impact that she wants. And then you add to it technology and various mediums for getting the same message out there. And you've got an entire coaching network, the OWN network, which becomes the output of everything that Oprah Winfrey did along the way. But that desire to be extraordinary, please write that down, the desire to be extraordinary. If there's one thing that you can take into this year, into 2019, that can make your 2019 extraordinary, it's the desire to be extraordinary. I've said before that, when I was having a conversation with Richard Branson, very fortunate to have been able to spend some time on his island. And when I was out there, I asked him, I said, do you have any trouble filling up the capacity of the resort? Because that's the biggest issue in the hotel resort industry. And he said, no, when you build something that's the best in the world, there's always a market for it. And that includes yourself. I added that includes yourself, but I really believe that to be so. So when you become the best in the world at what you do, there's always a market for it. Go back, rewind the clock to when Michael Jackson was practicing with the Jackson 5. And, obviously his father was a slave driver from a work ethic perspective. So there was a lot of outside influence that helped to mold Michael Jackson in terms of who he became. But let there be no mistake that Michael Jackson has had a desire from a very, very early age to be truly extraordinary. And as a result, he was. So what do you choose to be extraordinary at? To be extraordinary at? And how can you tap into that childlike energy that drove a Justin Timberlake to become a Justin Timberlake, or a Michael Jackson to become a Michael Jackson, or drove a Warren Buffett to become a Warren Buffett on a completely different front, or an Oprah Winfrey to become an Oprah Winfrey? I would submit to you that as we launch into this new year, that your desire to be extraordinary is the target to the path of tapping into that childlike fascination, energy, perhaps even idealism that we have when we're younger. When we're younger, we have all this raw energy and we think that anything is possible. And oftentimes as people grow up, they get beat down so much by life. I've experienced this myself, where it's like that energy isn't quite the same anymore. It's like, no, I don't want to go put all that energy in, or I don't want, and the problem with that is when we hit a jaded place in our life like that, or we hit a place where we don't have that same level of energy, then we don't have the same level of ability to create. There are challenging times. There are things that come up for each and every one of us along the path toward our greatest dreams and toward the greatest depths of fulfillment that we could ever have. We're going to have challenges. We may have big challenges. We may have traumatic things that rock our world. And our biggest task, I believe at some level, is to get back, no matter what happens, to get back to that childlike energy, to get back to that place where we have the belief and we have this, we talk about the suspension of disbelief, and that's almost what we have to do again as adults, is get back to that place where we can suspend disbelief so that we can get into a flow where all things are possible. You've heard, there's a lot of business people that'll say that if I only knew everything that would have to happen or everything I'd have to go through, I never would have started in the business. And that's probably true, right? But had they not had that childlike energy and the desire to be extraordinary and the belief in the possibility of creating their dreams, then they never would have gotten started either, right? So for me, we have to get started, because even if the business person who's jaded says, I never would have started if I knew all that I knew today, if you really pushed them for it, their business oftentimes, if it's the business that they do for their life, it's their salvation as well. So even though they say they might not have ever gotten started, what we need to set aside is not getting started. We need to set aside the disbelief that we can't tap into our dreams, that we can't be extraordinary, that we can't look at the sources of inspiration, since the beginning of time, or the beginning of our timeline, the beginning of your timeline, who've all your sources of inspiration been, and believe once again. Believe, tap into that level of certainty that if they can do it, you can do it. If a thing is humanly possible, consider it to be within your reach. Tap into that belief and that childlike fuel that can allow you to make it happen again. Set aside the hurt, the challenges, the traumas, the troubles, the things, the heartaches, the business failures, the divorces of relationships, or either marriages or any kind of relationship. Setting aside all of those things to go back into that place of pure creation is our salvation. Because every one of these people had that desire to be extraordinary. And if we lose that later in life, then I believe that that's where we lose our dreams. Warren Buffett said, if you want to know what makes me so great at what I do, if you want to know what's so great at building money, at growing money, he said, it's because I read over 2,000 annual reports a year. Okay, so they're laying out the formula here for us. Oprah Winfrey, 37,000 interviews. Warren Buffett, 2,000 annual reports. Think about for a second. Put yourself in Warren Buffett's shoes. Every night, he would have dinner with the family. That was really important to him, to be there around the family. But every night after dinner, Warren's back in his study, just like the Olympic athlete, the gold medalist athlete that's training, that's working, that's training every day when other people are going out with their friends and doing everything else. That gold medalist athlete is there working. Warren Buffett's in his study studying these annual reports, the reports that a company puts out at the end of the year that describes everything that happened inside that company and the financial inflows and outflows and all that type of stuff. He's studying these things that makes him extraordinary from a business analysis perspective. Warren Buffett doesn't consider himself to be a stock picker. He knows that he's a business analyst. Was that desire to be extraordinary, to prove himself right in terms of his investment philosophies, but to be extraordinary in the realm of finance, that creates a Warren Buffett. And when you look at the chain of being, doing, and having, I believe you can do and have whatever it is that you want. You can create whatever you want in life if you're being who you need to be. It's as a result of who Warren Buffett was being in the reading of the work ethic and the reading of those annual reports that created Warren Buffett. And when you look at Berkshire Hathaway, his holding company, which has a $200 billion book value, something, it's insane, right? When you look at that, that's when we talk about perception being projection. You can't see anything in the world that isn't you. That's a reflection of Warren Buffett's consciousness. His company is a reflection of his consciousness. The results that Oprah Winfrey's produced, to own a television network, is a reflection of her consciousness. It's a reflection of who she's become. It's a reflection of the work ethic that she had to be extraordinary, right? Look at, go back and rewind the clock to Elvis Presley. When, to learn to play the guitar, to learn to sing, to learn to perform. People, we look at people and we say, they're so talented. They're so extremely talented. They're an outlier. They're somebody that stands out from everybody else. But we don't think about the amount of work that went into becoming who they are. We don't think about the work ethic that went into Beyonce being able to perform the way that she does. We don't think about that desire to be extraordinary. I'm saying that if you think about that in your life and you think about where you're going to channel it, then just like every great person before you, this can be your greatest year yet if you embrace this one concept. Another way to look at this, another way to think about it, is not just the desire to be extraordinary within ourselves. We can also think about the desire to deliver extraordinary value. Right? If you're in a place in your business or in your life where you need more inspiration, where you need that kick to get you up and started, I get it. I've been there, and this is the very kick that can do it. I was here in Bali yesterday, I think it was, and I went and I met one of my old students, a guy named Pim Stort. And Pim was watching the UFC fights in a little bar down here, and he's like, "Hey, I'm here in Bali. Come and see me." And I, had a few extra minutes. I jumped on my bike and went down there to see him, and sat down next to him, and we were having a conversation about his life path. Talked about my life path, his life path. He's a financial planner, but he's also looking for something more. And without going too much into his story, because I already shared his name, and I don't want to go in too much into a story because I don't have his permission to do so. I haven't asked it, but I want to share the essence of the conversation that we had, which was essentially a midlife correction conversation, right? The conversation of looking for what's next. But when we talk about the midlife correction, that maybe you yourself are going through something like this, or maybe you know somebody who's going through something like that. The challenge is at the midlife correction, there's oftentimes a lot of jaded nature that comes in, and there's a lot of the buildup of the past challenges that have built up to the point where it's like, well, shit, I don't know that what I was going after my entire life is what I even want anymore. So what do I want? Right. So there's the redirection that we're setting, and you may be in a place where you're setting a redirection. If you are, come to Your Ultimate Breakthrough. Come to that seminar. I'm gifting you the tickets to that. Come to that and join us for that, and get your direction on track again. But in addition to the direction, and oftentimes when we do our modeling, that can help to supply direction too, because it opens our mind to possibilities that we didn't see before. But in addition to that, this idea of just embracing the goal of choosing to be extraordinary or to build something that's extraordinary, to build something, once again, as Richard Branson said, that's the best in the world, where there will always be a market for it. In Billionaire Bootcamp recently, we were studying Branson, and one of the things that he said that I took on, he said, I really, with this company I'm building, I really just want to build something that I can be proud of, that makes, Branson always positions himself as the consumer champion, where David and Goliath situations where he's attacking competitors who are bloated and have a take on the marketplace, and maybe they're charging too much money and they're delivering too little value. So he comes in as the consumer champion, and that's one of his strategies for growing what he's growing. But I was listening to an interview with him, and he said, I want to build something that I can be proud of. It reminded me of what Jeff Bezos says with Amazon, which has become the largest fortune in the world. But what Jeff Bezos said, he said, we want to build the world's most customer-centric company. Well, think about the love that goes into that. The world's most customer-centric company. Okay, that's the goal. The output is Amazon. The benefit to the consumer, to the end consumer, to you or I, is that it really is customer-centric. We have everything at our fingertips. We can have things delivered to our door, and they do it with timeliness. Right? They can do it fast. And so he's been able to build something really powerful from the attitude that he had, from the direction that he set, and from the goal that he set to build the world's most customer-centric company. Right? Think about the excellence that is involved in that, becoming the world's most customer-centric company. Think about the attention to detail that has to go into that. And then think about your own products or services. Think about what it is that you're looking to create this year. Think about your own business. If you build something that's the best in the world, there'll be a market for it. Think about yourself. Think about your talents, the things that you want that bring joy into your life. As you know, I started playing guitar about I keep saying 6 months, but it's probably been about 8 months now. And I've been practicing, and I practice a lot. At first it was a half hour a day, then it was an hour a day, and then it's likely more like 2 hours a day. And I've been really bummed because I've been traveling and I haven't been able to practice while on the road. So I just went this morning. It's New Year's Day here in Bali. So I went this morning to go buy a guitar because I have to be able to practice. I miss it. And in my deep trance identification with Elvis Presley and that desire to be extraordinary, I thought, well, I'm falling short here. There's all these days going by and I'm not tapping into the joy that I could be tapping into of playing, but I'm also not becoming extraordinary. So this morning, first thing I did was go out and pick up a guitar so that I could start playing again, so I can bring more of what makes my life joyful into my life. But with that idea, that desire to be extraordinary. I've always said, if you took piano lessons for 20 years, you'd get pretty good. There's no doubt about it. And just as you could get pretty good at that, you can get pretty good at anything. If you did it for 20 years, or if you did 37,000 hours of interviews like Oprah Winfrey did, right? But it comes back to the desire. It's not just the goal, it's the desire. Who do you choose to be, right? From a performer perspective, could anybody become an Elvis Presley? I believe so. Unless barring neurological constraints, I believe that anybody can develop themselves to that level. Now, I know we have physiological constraints. We can say that, 5-foot-tall basketball player can never go play. I get it. Right? So I say barring neurological constraints and within the own constraints of our physical body, right? We have a certain vessel that's probably best geared towards something, our God-given purpose, right? What we're really meant to do. And I think that we're guided toward that from our heart if we really listen. But when you combine listening to your heart with the desire to be extraordinary, your entire life can change. And not only can your entire life change, but those sources of inspiration that you looked up to could become stepping stones in a powerful way, so that you stand on the tall shoulders of the giants that preceded you, and you can see further into the future and you can create more in the future, because every generation has to pass the baton to the next generation. I remember when I was starting in the field of personal development, people said, oh, you'll never be Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is 6'7". He's got all these things. You'll never be. Who wants to be Tony Robbins? Why would I want to be Tony Robbins? Right? There was once a Phil Donahue that preceded Oprah Winfrey. And people were telling Oprah Winfrey, you'll never be Phil Donahue. Oh, you'll never be Barbara Walters. Well, the baton had to be passed. Oprah Winfrey has seen so much further than a lot of the original people that she was modeling, then the Phil Donahues, then the Barbara Walters. We take things further and further all the time. And, Pim, while he was at this bar, I told you I stopped in there and I was talking to him. And it was really clear to me, because I was thinking about all of this, that what I wanted to share with him is that if he could tap into this desire to be extraordinary again, that could fan the flames that could get him moving in his midlife correction, right? Because I was hearing a lot of the language that I've used in the past about, yeah, I don't want to do that. Oh yeah, I'm over that. But it's like, wait a second, where's the passion? Where's the drive that's going to drive you forward? So while I was there with Pim, and he was watching, I think it was UFC 232 or something like that, there was a fighter in the UFC there were a couple of fighters that were in there. There's a women's fighter named Cyborg, and she was fighting another fighter, Amanda Nunes. And Nunes was more of the newcomer. Cyborg was the one who had held the reign for so long, and everybody believed in her as being, the end-all ultimate fighter. And then Nunes came in and beat her in, I think it was 56 seconds, right? And it's not the first time that I've seen that. When my martial arts instructor, my friend Hoist Gracie, was beaten by Matt Hughes, a young up-and-coming fighter, and he was beaten very quickly and ferociously. And Hoist Gracie was the god that I looked up to, who used to beat 3 and 4 people in a night. And now this next generation of fighter was beating him and moving it forward, right? And there was another, and I remember it was devastating for me because I didn't know what sense to make of it. But it's the nature of humankind that we're going to pass the baton to the next generation, and we're going to continue to move things forward. There was another fighter in this particular fight, BJ Penn, who was once again another one of these guys who's like a god in the realm of fighting, especially in jiu-jitsu. And he went in there and he fought a young guy named Ryan Hall. And I know of Ryan from way back when he was just a kid, And so I haven't met Ryan Hall personally, I don't think. But as he was coming up through the ranks of jiu-jitsu, I saw this guy come up from just a kid to being somebody who now beat BJ Penn, and he beat him within the first 2 to 3 minutes of the first round. And he did it by tapping BJ Penn out. He did it with a jiu-jitsu move, and BJ Penn has never been tapped out before. He's never been beaten from a jiu-jitsu perspective in the UFC. He's never tapped out, and he did in this fight with Ryan Hall. And Ryan Hall was using leg locks and fancy techniques that we see emerging now, but just weren't around back in the days when the originators were starting. And so he beat him with something that was mind-boggling to watch and pure beauty. But it tells you that the next generation is going to take things further and further. It tells me that all the time, every time. So when people were telling me, "Oh, you're not going to be Tony Robbins," oh, wait a second. What were they? When they were telling Mike Tyson that he was never going to be the next Joe Louis, right? There's always the next. There's always the next generation of people that take things forward, and it doesn't have to be in the same way. It can be in a new and expansive way, and it doesn't have to be in an abrasive way. It can be in a joyful and celebratory way. Right? We can celebrate Phil Donahue, we can celebrate Barbara Walters, and we can celebrate Oprah Winfrey. And there's going to be somebody that takes it beyond what Oprah Winfrey's taken it beyond. But the person who's going to do that is the person who has the desire to be extraordinary. The person who's going to deliver something extraordinary to the world in terms of their product or service, to build the world's most customer-centric company. It's going to be the person with that desire that's going to do it. So this isn't about becoming the next name on the ladder of success in relationship to whatever field you're in. Today, the message is really about awakening within you, awakening within me, that desire to be extraordinary and to deliver extraordinary products and services and deliver things to the marketplace that the world has never seen. When we can get into that space, we can get into a space of magic. And knowing once again that love is what makes all things great. Love is what turns lead into gold in our lives from a personal perspective. So if we're looking to fan the flames, to fan the inspiration, to fan the desire, think about the desire to be extraordinary. Fall in love with that. Rorion Gracie told me in jiu-jitsu, he said, you don't have to memorize jiu-jitsu, Chris. So you don't have to memorize this stuff, right? Just as you don't have to memorize the financial management skills of Warren Buffett. You don't have to memorize whatever it takes to be great in your field. What Rorion Gracie said was, all you have to do is enjoy it. You love the process so much that you become extraordinary as a result of it. And if there's one thing I want you to take into this new year, and we're going to start our coaching sessions will go back onto their normal calendar time slot on the 3rd, and I look forward to seeing you in just a couple of days on that live session. But if there's one thing that you take into this year, take in the desire to be extraordinary and the desire to deliver in the form of your products, your services, or your company, or whatever it is that you're creating for the world, something extraordinary, something that is, like Richard Branson said, that you can really, really be proud of. Because if you do that, the money, the rewards will come as a result of that. Right. Remember that money is a reflection of the value that we create for others in the eyes of the marketplace. So we look to create value, but let's create extraordinary value. Let's create something that is jaw-dropping. That's my goal for this year with our companies. And I hope to inspire you today here in some way to fan the flames. So that can be part of your goal as well, if that works for you. Right? So in your own life, the desire to be extraordinary, and in your business, the desire to be extraordinary and to deliver the extraordinary. With that said, much love to you. Happy New Year's. And we will see you. I don't know. I kissed at you again. I did that last time too. This is a little weird. Maybe it's just being in Bali. Am I getting in touch with the feminine aspects of myself? I don't know. Not in any weird ways. But anyway, love you lots. And we will see you on Wednesday's call. Yeah.